The Kreshtari armada moved through space like a swarm of angry hornets. 247 warships, each one larger than a city block, their hulls painted in the traditional red and gold of the Empire. They had fought wars for 300 years. They had conquered 18 different species. They had never lost a major battle. Admiral Velkoth sat in his command chair, watching the scanner displays with casual interest. His ship, the Eternal Victory, was the largest vessel in the fleet. From his position, he could see the tactical display showing every ship under his command, arranged in perfect formation. It was a sight that had made countless enemies surrender before a single shot was fired. Today's patrol was supposed to be routine. They were checking the neutral zones near the Zaltef systems, making sure no one had forgotten who controlled these regions of space. The Kreshtari believed in showing strength. A fleet this size reminded everyone that the Empire was not to be challenged. Then the scanners picked up a single contact. "Sir, we have a vessel approaching," the sensor officer announced. "Single ship mid-sized. Configuration matches Terran design." Velkoth leaned forward slightly. Terrans. Humans. The young species that had barely learned to travel faster than light 30 years ago. He had read the reports about them. They came from a world called Earth, far away in a quiet arm of the galaxy. They were weak, soft-skinned creatures who breathed oxygen and died easily. Their technology was primitive. They used kinetic weapons, actual projectiles, instead of proper plasma or energy beams. "One ship?" Velkoth asked, his voice carrying amusement. "Are they lost?" "Unknown, sir. They appear to be on a direct course for the Zaltef system. Diplomatic transponder is active." The Admiral made a clicking sound with his mandibles, which his crew recognized as laughter. "A diplomatic mission with one ship? Either they are very brave or very stupid. Open a channel." The main screen flickered to life. A human appeared, female, wearing a dark blue uniform with silver insignia on the collar. Her face was smooth, with none of the proper ridges or scales that marked a true warrior species. She had brown skin and dark eyes that seemed to study everything. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Consolidated Military Ship Determination," she said calmly. "We are on a peaceful diplomatic mission to the Zaltef Collective. We request safe passage through this region in accordance with Galactic Convention." Velkoth's mandibles clicked again, louder this time. Behind him, several officers made similar sounds. The human's voice was steady, but their translators detected slight variations in her heartbeat and breathing. She was afraid, trying to hide it behind formal words. "I am Admiral Velkoth of the Kreshtari Empire," he replied. "This region is under our protection. You will surrender your vessel immediately and submit to inspection. Refuse, and your ship will be destroyed." Captain Chen's expression did not change. "Admiral, we are on a peaceful mission. We carry no weapons of aggression and pose no threat to Kreshtari interests. We respectfully decline your demand and again request safe passage." The bridge of the Eternal Victory erupted in clicking laughter. Velkoth held up one clawed hand for silence. This was entertaining, but he needed to make an example. Other species needed to see what happened when the Empire's demands were refused. "You have 1 hour to surrender," Velkoth said. "After that, my fleet will open fire. I suggest you use the time to pray to whatever gods your species believes in." He cut the transmission. Around the bridge, his officers continued to make amused sounds. One of them, a young female named Sekrith, pulled up information on her screen. "Sir, intelligence reports say humans are only rated Class 4 on the combat effectiveness scale. Their ships use primitive railguns and missile systems. No energy shields, only physical armor. They have never fought a major space battle." "Class 4? Velkoth clicked his mandibles in dismissal. "We routinely destroy Class 6 species. This will be over quickly." He switched to the fleet-wide channel. "Attention all ships. In 1 hour we will engage a single Terran vessel. I want everyone to watch. Let this be a lesson about the price of refusing the Empire." Throughout the fleet, Kreshtari warriors gathered at their stations. Many brought refreshments, treating the upcoming battle as entertainment. They shared jokes about human weakness, about their soft bodies and primitive weapons. Some placed bets on how long the human ship would last. The most optimistic gave it 5 minutes. On the tactical display, the single human ship continued its slow approach toward the Zaltef system. It made no aggressive moves, no attempt to flee. It simply maintained its course as if 247 warships did not exist. Velkoth watched the chronometer count down. 50 minutes. 40 minutes. 30 minutes. The human ship did not change its behavior. Perhaps they were paralyzed with fear. Perhaps they were too stupid to understand their situation. When the hour expired, Velkoth opened the channel again. "Captain Chen, your time has expired. Surrender now or die." The human woman appeared on the screen once more. Her face was calm, perhaps even sad. "I'm sorry you've chosen this path, Admiral. We came in peace." "Then you will die in peace," Velkoth replied. He cut the transmission and turned to his weapons officer. "Deploy attack formation Gamma. 12 ships. Make it quick but visible. I want the rest of the galaxy to see what happens to those who defy us." 12 Kreshtari warships broke from the main formation, their engines blazing as they accelerated toward the single human vessel. Their weapons charged, plasma cannons glowing with deadly energy. The rest of the fleet watched, waiting for the show to begin. The human ship, the Determination, finally moved. But it did not run away. Instead, it accelerated forward directly toward the attacking ships. Its engines flared bright blue, and it began to move in ways that made Velkoth's sensor officer lean closer to her screens. "Sir," she said slowly, "the human ship is taking evasive action, but the pattern is unusual. It's not random. It's very precise." Velkoth watched as the first plasma bolts reached out for the human vessel. The Determination twisted, rolled, and dropped, each movement perfectly timed. The plasma missed by meters. More shots followed, and each time, the human ship seemed to know exactly where the attack would come from. "Increase firepower," Velkoth ordered, his amusement fading slightly. The 12 Kreshtari ships intensified their assault. The space around the Determination filled with deadly plasma fire, enough to destroy a dozen normal vessels. But the human ship danced through it all, moving with a grace that should not have been possible for something so primitive. Minutes passed. Then 10 minutes. Then 20. Not a single shot had landed a solid hit on the human vessel. On the bridge of the Eternal Victory, no one was clicking with amusement anymore. They watched in growing confusion as the single human ship continued to evade everything thrown at it. Something was wrong. This should have been over already. Velkoth's claws gripped the arms of his command chair. "All attack ships converge on target. Increase to 50 vessels. End this now." 50 Kreshtari warships now surrounded the single human vessel. The tactical display on the Eternal Victory showed them forming a sphere around the Determination, cutting off all escape routes. It was a classic encirclement maneuver, one that had never failed the Empire. Admiral Velkoth expected the human ship to panic now. Surely they could see they were trapped. Surely they understood that 50 ships could generate enough firepower to vaporize a small moon. He waited for the surrender signal, for Captain Chen to realize her mistake. The surrender never came. Instead, the Determination did something unexpected. It accelerated hard toward the thinnest part of the encirclement, its engines burning at what must have been maximum power. 3 Kreshtari cruisers moved to intercept, their plasma cannons charging for a combined strike that would catch the human ship in a crossfire. Sekrith, the young sensor officer, suddenly made a sharp sound. "Sir, I'm detecting unusual computer activity from the human vessel. Their systems are running calculations at extremely high speed." "So what?" Velkoth snapped. "They're trying to find a way out. They won't find one." But the sensor officer's mandibles were twitching, a sign of confusion. "No, sir. It's not navigation calculations. It's predictive modeling. They're analyzing our weapons systems." Before Velkoth could respond, the 3 Kreshtari cruisers fired. The plasma bolts converged on the exact point where the Determination should have been. But the human ship had already moved, dropping below the firing plane a full second before the weapons discharged. The plasma bolts passed through empty space and nearly hit one of the Empire's own ships on the other side. "How did they know?" someone whispered on the bridge. The Determination continued its movement, threading between 2 Kreshtari destroyers with less than 50 meters of clearance on either side. Both destroyers fired, filling the narrow gap with deadly energy. The human ship rolled 90 degrees, presenting the smallest possible profile, and slipped through unharmed. One of the plasma bolts struck the opposing destroyer's shield, causing it to flare bright yellow. "They're reading our targeting solutions," Sekrith said, her voice rising. "I don't know how, but they're predicting where we'll fire before we fire." "Impossible," Velkoth growled. "Our encryption is military grade. No one has ever broken it." Then explain what we're seeing, sir. The Admiral had no answer. On the screen, the human ship continued to move through the Kreshtari formation, like water flowing around rocks. Every attack seemed to miss by just enough. Every trap closed on empty space. It was as if the humans could see the future. A Kreshtari battlecruiser, frustrated by the continuous misses, fired a spread pattern. 24 plasma bolts released simultaneously in a grid that should have been impossible to evade. The determination somehow found the one path through that grid, moving with precision that made Velkoth's hearts beat faster. No pilot should be able to fly like that. No computer should be able to calculate that quickly. Sir, we've been firing for 43 minutes, the weapons officer reported. Ammunition reserves at 70% for the engaged ships. Not a single confirmed hit. Velkoth's claws dug into his command chair. Around him, the bridge was silent. The clicking sounds of amusement had died long ago, replaced by an uncomfortable tension. This was supposed to be entertainment, a quick lesson for the galaxy. Instead, it was becoming something else. Something that looked suspiciously like embarrassment. The human ship hasn't fired back, another officer observed quietly. Not once. That detail bothered Velkoth more than he wanted to admit. Why weren't they fighting back? Did they have no weapons? Or were they waiting for something? He opened the fleet channel. All ships converge on the human vessel. I want every available ship in weapons range. Overwhelming firepower. Now. The rest of the Kreshtari armada began to move. 247 warships, the pride of the Empire, all focused on destroying a single mid-sized frigate. The formation changed from a parade formation to an attack swarm, ships jockeying for position to get clear shots at the target. The determination suddenly changed its behavior. Instead of defensive maneuvers, it began to move in a new pattern, a spiral that took it through the densest part of the Kreshtari fleet. It was suicide, Velkoth thought. They must have panicked. But as the human ship entered the mass of Kreshtari vessels, something strange happened. The Empire's ships began to interfere with each other. Firing solutions overlapped. Ships had to hold fire or risk hitting their own forces. The determination somehow found every blind spot, every gap in the formation, moving as if it knew exactly where each Kreshtari ship would be. They're using our numbers against us, Sekrith whispered. Our own formation is protecting them. Velkoth felt something he had not experienced in decades of warfare: uncertainty. He had commanded fleets in dozens of battles. He had destroyed enemies far more advanced than these primitive humans. But he had never seen anything move like that ship. He had never felt so completely outmaneuvered. Then the determination finally opened fire. The sound on the bridge was subtle, just sensor alerts pinging. But what those sensors showed made every Kreshtari warrior freeze. The human ship had fired 6 rounds. Not plasma, not energy beams. Simple kinetic projectiles, metal slugs accelerated to incredible speeds. Each slug found a target. The first struck the shield generator housing of the battlecruiser Crimson Talon. Not the shield itself, but the generator, hitting a weak point in the armor that was barely 10 centimeters wide. The shields flickered and died. The second round hit a destroyer's communications array, severing it cleanly from the hull. The ship went silent, cut off from the fleet network. The third shot entered the barrel of a cruiser's main plasma cannon just as it was charging to fire. The weapon exploded internally, venting atmosphere and forcing the ship to withdraw. The fourth, fifth, and sixth shots were equally precise. Each one hit a critical system. Each one exploited a weakness that should have been impossible to target from that range. At that speed, through that much interference. Combat analysis, Velkoth demanded, his voice harsh. The tactical officer's mandibles trembled as he spoke. Sir, those shots were impossible. The targeting windows were less than 0.003 seconds in some cases. The precision required suggests computational power beyond anything in our databases, and they did it while performing evasive maneuvers at maximum acceleration. Are they firing again? No, sir. They've ceased fire. They're just moving again. Defensive patterns only. Velkoth stared at the tactical display. The human ship had fired 6 shots to prove a point. 6 perfect shots that disabled 6 ships. It wasn't fighting to win. It was demonstrating capability. A new transmission came from the determination. Captain Chen appeared on the screen, her expression unchanged. That same calm face, those same steady eyes. But now Velkoth saw something different there. Not fear, not uncertainty. Something that made his blood run cold. Confidence. "Admiral Velkoth," she said quietly, "you've been fighting wars for 3 centuries. We've been preparing for war for 3,000 years. Every battle you've ever recorded, we've studied. Every weakness you've shown, we've catalogued. Every tactic you've developed, we've countered. You asked why we sent 1 ship. The answer is simple. We only needed 1. The transmission ended. On the bridge of the eternal victory, nobody moved. The implication of those words hung in the air like poison gas. If this was what 1 average human ship could do, what would 100 do? What would 1,000 do? For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Velkoth wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. The battle had been going for 2 hours now. 2 hours of the entire Kreshtari armada trying to destroy 1 human ship. 2 hours of failure. Admiral Velkoth no longer sat in his command chair. He stood before the main tactical display, watching the determination move through his fleet like a ghost. His mandibles were clamped shut in frustration. Around him, the bridge crew worked in tense silence, occasionally glancing at their admiral with worry. The communications channel lit up with incoming messages from other ships in the fleet. Captains requesting orders, weapons officers reporting ammunition status, damage control teams dealing with friendly fire incidents. The professional military machine of the Kreshtari Empire was starting to show cracks. "Admiral, the stalwart defender reports they fired on the Iron Resolve by mistake," an officer reported. "Minor damage to shields. No casualties." Velkoth said nothing. It was the 3rd such incident in the past hour. His ships were so focused on the human vessel, so desperate to land a hit that they were becoming careless. The determination kept positioning itself so that Kreshtari ships were always in each other's firing lines. "Sir, we need new orders," his second-in-command said quietly. "The fleet is getting frustrated. Some captains are suggesting we withdraw and call for reinforcements." "Withdraw?" Velkoth turned sharply. "We have 247 ships. They have 1. We do not withdraw, then what do we do?" It was a good question. Everything they tried failed. Widespread attacks left gaps the humans slipped through. Concentrated fire was evaded with impossible precision. Encirclement tactics were turned against them. The Kreshtari fought with overwhelming force, but overwhelming force meant nothing if you could not hit your target. Sekrith, the sensor officer, made a sudden noise. "Sir, the human ship is changing course." "They're heading toward the Epsilon debris field." Velkoth looked at the navigation display. The Epsilon field was the remains of an ancient battle, thousands of years old. Destroyed ships and broken stations spread across billions of cubic kilometers of space, creating a dangerous maze of metal and rock. No sane captain would fly into that at combat speeds. "They're running out of room to maneuver," Velkoth said, feeling a surge of hope. "They're trapped. Set pursuit course. All ships follow them in." The Kreshtari armada changed direction as one, chasing after the fleeing human vessel. Velkoth allowed himself a small click of satisfaction. Finally, the humans had made a mistake. In the debris field, there would be no room for their fancy flying. The wreckage would block their escape paths. It would be like hunting in a canyon. The determination entered the field first, disappearing among the twisted metal and ancient hulls. The Kreshtari fleet followed, spreading out to cover all possible exit points. Velkoth studied the tactical display, watching his ships take up positions. He had them now. There was no way out. "Sir, the human ship has slowed," Sekrith reported, power signatures dropping. I think they might be having engine problems." "Finally," Velkoth breathed. "All ships close in. Weapons free. Destroy that vessel." The Kreshtari warships moved deeper into the debris field, scanning for the human ship. The determination appeared on their sensors, drifting near what looked like the hull of an ancient freighter. Its engines were barely running, just enough for station keeping. It looked dead in space. "Target acquired," the weapons officer said. "Multiple ships have firing solutions." "Awaiting your order, sir." Velkoth raised his claw, ready to give the final command. After 2 hours of humiliation, it would finally end. The Empire would have its victory. The story of this battle would be carefully edited, of course. No one needed to know how long it took. His claw started to drop. Then space came alive. All around the Kreshtari fleet, the debris field activated. What Velkoth had thought were ancient wrecks were actually weapons platforms. Dozens of them, hidden among the real debris, powered down and invisible until this moment. They lit up like stars, their targeting sensors all focusing on the Kreshtari ships. "Multiple contacts," Sekrith shouted. 43? No, 56, counting over 70 autonomous weapons platforms. "They were already here, sir. They were waiting." Velkoth felt his blood freeze, a trap. The humans had led them into a trap. That long chase, the apparent engine failure, all of it planned. The determination had not been running. It had been positioning them. All ships evasive, Velkoth started to order. The human platforms opened fire, but they did not fire to kill. The first wave of kinetic rounds struck engines. Kreshtari ships suddenly lost propulsion, drifting helplessly in the debris field. The second wave targeted weapons systems. Plasma cannons exploded or went dead. Point defense systems sparked and failed. The third wave hit communication arrays, sensor clusters, navigation equipment. It was surgical, precise. Each platform seemed to know exactly what to hit and when. The Kreshtari fleet was being systematically dismantled, ship by ship, system by system. And through it all, not a single shot hit life support. Not one round struck crew quarters. The humans were crippling, not killing. Their net worked. Sekrith called out, her voice high with panic. "All the platforms are sharing targeting data, and they're coordinating with the determination. It's like fighting one enemy with 100 bodies." The Eternal Victory shook as kinetic rounds slammed into its engine assembly. Velkoth grabbed his command chair to stay upright. Red warning lights flooded the bridge. Damage reports poured in from all over the ship, main engines offline, secondary power failing. Weapons systems not responding. Velkoth looked at the tactical display. All across the field, his ships were going dark. 247 warships, the most powerful fleet in this sector of space, were being taken apart by an enemy they could barely see. The platforms were small, fast, and precise. Every shot counted. Every hit crippled. And that one human ship, the Determination, sat calmly in the center of it all. Not moving. Not fleeing. Just watching as its automated weapons did the work. "How?" Velkoth whispered. "How did they know we would follow them here?" "Because they studied us," his second-in-command said quietly. "They knew our tactics. They knew we would chase. They knew we would not retreat. They used our own pride against us." A new transmission came through. Captain Chen appeared on the screen, her face still calm. Behind her, Velkoth could see the bridge of the Determination, smaller than his, more cramped, with crew members working at stations that looked almost primitive. But those crew members moved with perfect efficiency. No panic, no fear. "Admiral Velkoth, this is Captain Chen. Cease hostile action immediately. You are not in danger. I repeat, you are not in danger. We have disabled your fleet, but left all life support and environmental systems intact. Your crews are safe." Velkoth wanted to roar defiance, but his voice caught. "Safe? They had destroyed his fleet and they called it safe. You wondered why we sent one ship," Chen continued. "The answer is simple. We only needed one. Not because the Determination is our strongest vessel. It's an average frigate by our standards. We sent one ship because we wanted you to understand something before you met the rest of humanity." She paused, and Velkoth saw something in her eyes. Not cruelty. Not triumph. Something almost like sadness. Your species fights wars of conquest and expansion. You fight to dominate. But humans? We fought ourselves for thousands of years. We perfected warfare not as a tool of empire, but as a science of survival. Every nation on our world clashed with others. We learned to fight outnumbered. We learned to fight outgunned. We learned to turn our enemies' strengths into weaknesses. On the tactical display, the last few Kreshtari ships went dark. The entire fleet was disabled, helpless, at the mercy of an enemy they had laughed at just hours before. "You asked why we carry kinetic weapons in an age of energy shields," Chen said. "Because we studied you. Plasma disperses. Energy can be redirected. But momentum? Momentum is physics. It does not care about your shield frequency or your armor composition. We use them because they work." Velkoth slumped into his command chair. His mandibles hung open in shock. Around him, his crew stared at the screen, listening to the human captain explain how thoroughly they had been defeated. "We did not come here for war, Admiral," Chen finished. "We came in peace. We sent one ship as a courtesy, assuming you would honor diplomatic conventions. You chose violence. So we responded with a lesson instead of a slaughter. Your crews will live. Your ships can be repaired. But you will remember this day, and you will tell others what you learned. The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, Velkoth realized that everything had changed. The Kreshtari Empire had always believed itself superior. They had conquered species after species, building an empire on the assumption that they were the strongest, the smartest, the best. But today, they had met something new. Something that did not fight like them, did not think like them, did not make the same assumptions they did. They had met humanity, and humanity had taught them a lesson they would never forget. They had laughed at one Terran ship. Now surrounded by their own disabled fleet, no one was laughing anymore. The Kreshtari Empire had rules for what happened after a battle. The winners took prisoners. The losers surrendered their ships. Treaties were signed. Territories changed hands. It was all very organized, very predictable. Admiral Velkoth knew these rules by heart. He had enforced them dozens of times. But this situation followed no rules he knew. The determination made no demands. It did not board the disabled Kreshtari ships. It did not take prisoners. It simply sat in space watching, while the human weapons platforms powered down and went dormant again, disappearing back into the debris field like they had never existed. "Sir, we're receiving a narrow-beam transmission from the human vessel," the communications officer said. "Audio only. It's addressed to you personally." Velkoth straightened in his command chair, trying to maintain some dignity despite the disaster around him. "Put it through." Captain Chen's voice came through clearly. "Admiral, I'm sending you repair priorities and technical specifications for your disabled systems. Your engineers should be able to restore basic propulsion within 12 hours. Full repairs will take longer, but you'll be able to move your ships to a safe location." Velkoth's mandibles opened in shock. "You're helping us repair our ships." "Yes, as I said, we're not here to start a war. We're here to prevent one." There was a pause. "Admiral, I need you to understand something. What happened today was not about defeating you. It was about education." "Education?" Velkoth felt anger rise in his chest. "You humiliated the entire Kreshtari armada and you call it education?" "I call it necessary." Chen's voice remained calm, patient. "Your fleet attacked a diplomatic vessel without provocation. Under galactic law, we would have been justified in destroying every ship you have. We didn't, we disabled you instead. Do you understand why?" Velkoth said nothing. "Because we wanted you to live to tell the story," Chen continued. "We wanted you to go back to your empire and explain what happened here. Not because we want to threaten anyone, but because we want other species to understand what humanity is capable of before they make the same mistake you did." "You want us to spread fear of humanity," Velkoth said bitterly. "No, we want you to spread understanding." Chen's tone shifted slightly, becoming more serious. "Admiral, humanity almost destroyed itself multiple times in our history. We fought world wars. We built weapons that could kill billions. We came very close to extinction. Do you know what saved us?" Velkoth did not answer. "We learned," Chen said simply. "We learned that war is not glory. It's not honor. It's not a game. War is what happens when communication fails, when pride matters more than survival, when beings stop thinking and start killing. We learned these lessons the hard way in our own blood on our own world." On the bridge of the eternal victory, the crew listened in silence. These were not the words of a conqueror. These were not victory speeches. This was something else. "When we finally reached the stars and found other species," Chen continued, "we hoped we would never have to use what we learned. We hoped that other civilizations had also learned these lessons. But your empire attacked us without talking, without negotiating. You saw one ship and decided it was weak. You decided to make an example of us." "We were following standard Imperial protocol," Velkoth said defensively. "And that's the problem. Your protocol assumes that military might makes you right, that superior numbers equal superior civilization, that anyone weaker than you deserves to be conquered. But strength is not about size, Admiral. It's not about numbers. It's about knowing when to fight and when not to." Velkoth looked at his tactical display. 247 ships. All disabled. All helpless. Chen was right. Numbers had meant nothing. "How long have you been planning this?" he asked. "Planning this specific engagement?" "About 3 weeks. We knew your fleet was patrolling this sector. We knew your typical responses to foreign vessels. We set up the weapons platforms and programmed them to network with our ship. Then we sent the determination on a diplomatic mission, hoping you would let us pass. You hoped we would attack? No, Chen said, and Velkoth heard genuine regret in her voice. We hoped you wouldn't, but we prepared for the possibility. That's what humans do, Admiral. We hope for peace but prepare for war. Every time. Always. Sekrith, the young censor officer, suddenly spoke up. Captain Chen, I have a question. There was a brief pause. Go ahead. Your ship was reading our targeting solutions, our weapons patterns, our tactical decisions, how. Our encryption is the best in the Empire. You're right, Chen replied. Your encryption is excellent. We didn't break it. We didn't need to. We just watched your behavior. Every species has patterns in how they fight. Favorite formations, preferred attack angles, response times. We studied thousands of your battles, Admiral. Not just the ones you won, but the ones you lost. We built computer models of how Kreshitari commanders think, how they react under pressure, what decisions they make when faced with different situations. You're saying you predicted our actions? Velkoth asked. Not perfectly, but close enough. Your plasma weapons have a charging cycle. Your ships have reaction times. Your formation tactics follow specific doctrines. Once we understood the patterns, we could predict where you would fire before you fired. It's not magic, Admiral. It's just very careful observation. Velkoth felt a chill run down his spine. The humans had done something the Empire had never considered. They had turned warfare into mathematics. They had studied their enemies so thoroughly that they could predict battle outcomes before the battle began. There's something else you should know, Chen said. Those weapons platforms in the debris field. We've been placing them throughout this sector for months, not to attack anyone, but to defend ourselves if we were attacked. They're in 17 different systems along our diplomatic routes, all networked, all waiting. You've been preparing for war this entire time, Velkoth said. No, we've been preparing to prevent war. There's a difference. Chen paused. Admiral, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. If our positions were reversed, if you had disabled our fleet the way we disabled yours, what would you do next? Velkoth knew the answer immediately. We would demand surrender. Take your ships as prizes. Imprison your crews. Claim your territory. Exactly. And that's why we're different. In 30 minutes, the determination will leave this area and continue our diplomatic mission to the Zaltef systems. We're going to leave your fleet here disabled but alive. No prisoners. No demands. No territories claimed. Your ships, your crews, your weapons, all yours to keep and repair. Why? Velkoth demanded. Why let us go? Because taking prisoners starts wars, Chen said quietly. Claiming territory starts wars. Demanding surrender starts wars. We don't want war, Admiral. We never did. We just want to be left in peace, and we want other species to know that attacking us is a very bad idea. The transmission fell silent for a moment. Then Chen spoke again, and her voice was different now, harder, colder. But understand this, Admiral Velkoth. Today was a lesson. Today we disabled your fleet. We could have destroyed it. We chose mercy because you're not evil, just proud and mistaken. But if the Kreshitari Empire comes at us again, if you send fleets to our colonies, to our trade routes, to our home, we will not show mercy twice. We will not disable. We will eliminate the threat, completely, finally, without hesitation. Is that a threat? Velkoth asked. No, it's a promise. And it's the same promise we would make to any species that threatens us. We will not start wars, but we will end them. On our terms. With our methods. And we will win. The transmission ended. Velkoth sat in his command chair, staring at the silent communications panel. Around him, his crew began receiving the technical data Captain Chen had promised. Repair procedures, system specifications, detailed instructions on how to restore their disabled ships. The humans were helping them. After defeating them, after humiliating them, the humans were providing aid to enemies who had tried to destroy them. Sir, his second-in-command said quietly. What do we do now? Velkoth took a long breath. We repair our ships, we return to Imperial space, and we make our report to the High Council. What will you tell them? The truth, Velkoth said. That we encountered a species unlike any we've known. A species that fights not for conquest but for survival. A species that shows mercy to enemies who don't deserve it. And a species that we must never ever fight again. He looked at the tactical display one last time. 247 ships. The pride of the Empire. All defeated by one average human frigate and a captain who preferred teaching to killing. The Kreshitari Empire had laughed at humanity. Now they would remember them, and they would make sure every other species in the galaxy understood the lesson they had learned today. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy is not the one with the biggest weapons. It's the one who knows exactly how to use the weapons they have. 3 weeks had passed since the battle in the Epsilon debris field. Admiral Velkoth stood before the High Council of the Kreshtari Empire, the most powerful beings in his civilization. 12 council members sat in elevated seats looking down at him with expressions of displeasure. Behind them, the great seal of the Empire, a claw gripping a star, seemed to mock him. "Let me understand this correctly," Council Leader Thraxar said, his old voice sharp with anger. "You took 247 warships, the largest fleet in the sector, and you were defeated by a single human vessel." "Yes, Council Leader," Velkoth replied. "There was no point in lying. The truth would come out eventually. How many casualties did we suffer?" "None, Council Leader." The council chamber fell silent. Thraxar leaned forward. "None? Explain." "The humans disabled our ships but did not destroy them. They targeted engines, weapons, and communications. They deliberately avoided hitting life support or crew quarters. They crippled us without killing us. Why would they do that?" Another council member asked. "Because they wanted us to survive to tell this story," Velkoth said. "They wanted the Empire to understand what humanity is capable of." He spent the next hour explaining everything: the pursuit, the trap, the weapons platforms, the surgical precision of the human attacks, the networking of their systems. Captain Chen's final transmission. When he finished, the council chamber was silent again. "Show us the battle recordings," Thraxar commanded. Velkoth activated the holographic display. The council watched in silence as the Determination evaded 247 ships for hours. They watched as the human vessel fired just 6 shots, each one perfect, each one demonstrating capabilities that should not exist. They watched as the Kreshtari armada was methodically dismantled in the debris field. When the recordings ended, no one spoke for a long time. "What are your recommendations, Admiral?" Thraxar finally asked. "We must not fight humanity," Velkoth said firmly. "Ever. Not now, not in the future. They are more dangerous than any species we have encountered." "One ship defeated your fleet," a council member said dismissively. "Perhaps you were simply incompetent." Velkoth's mandibles clicked in frustration. "Council member, I have commanded fleets for 40 years. I have won 37 major engagements. I know competence from incompetence. This was not about skill. This was about capability. The humans fight differently than anyone we've faced. They study their enemies. They predict behavior. They turn our strengths into weaknesses. And most importantly, they plan everything. Surely we have warriors who could learn these techniques," another member said. "You do not understand," Velkoth said, his voice rising. "It's not about learning techniques. It's about their entire approach to conflict. They think generations ahead. They place weapons platforms months before a battle might happen. They study enemies for years before first contact. Every action they take has multiple purposes. The Determination was sent on a diplomatic mission, yes, but it was also bait for a trap, a test of our intentions and a demonstration of their capabilities." "All at once. You sound afraid of them," Thraxar observed. "I am," Velkoth admitted. "And you should be too." "Because that one ship? Captain Chen told me it was average by human standards." "Average. If that is their normal capability, imagine what their best ships can do. Imagine what their fleet could do." "How large is their fleet?" a council member asked. Velkoth remembered asking Captain Chen that question. He remembered her answer. She said they have enough. When I pressed her, she said every human ship is crewed by beings who spent 10,000 years learning that the only thing more dangerous than humanity at war is humanity when they have something to protect. The council chamber fell silent once more. The implications of that statement were clear. Humanity had fought itself for millennia. They had perfected warfare not against other species but against each other. They had learned every possible way to fight, to win, to survive. And then they had taken all that knowledge and applied it to space. "What do we know about their home world?" Thraxar asked. "Intelligence reports say Earth has one government now, but historically it had hundreds of nations all competing with each other. Some reports mention world wars, conflicts that involved their entire planet. They developed weapons capable of destroying their whole civilization. And somehow they survived all of it. A species that nearly destroyed itself," a council member mused, "and learned from it." "Exactly," Velkoth said. Most species unite before reaching the stars. Humanity reached the stars while still learning to unite. They brought all their knowledge of war with them. All their strategies, all their weapons, all their understanding of how to fight and win against desperate odds. Thraxar was quiet for a long moment. What else did Captain Chen tell you? She said they hoped for peace but prepared for war. Always. She said they don't want to start conflicts, but they will end them. She said they showed us mercy once, but they would not show it again if we came at them a second time. A threat, someone muttered. A promise, Velkoth corrected. There's a difference. A threat is about intimidation. A promise is about certainty. The humans were completely confident that if we attacked again, they would win. Not might win, would win. And after what I saw, I believe them. The council debated for hours. Some members wanted to prepare for war with humanity, building up their forces for eventual conflict. Others wanted to avoid humans entirely, pretending they did not exist. But Thraxar, the council leader, made the final decision. We will do neither, he announced. We will open diplomatic relations with humanity. We will establish embassies. We will create trade agreements, and we will make it very clear to the rest of the empire that humanity is not to be threatened or attacked under any circumstances. You want us to befriend them? A council member asked in disbelief. I want us to survive, Thraxar replied. Admiral Velkoth is right. Humanity is more dangerous than any species we've encountered, but they're also more merciful. They could have destroyed our fleet. They didn't. They could have demanded surrender. They didn't. They could have taken territory or prisoners. They didn't. Instead, they let us go and even helped us repair our ships. That tells me something important. What? Someone asked. That they mean what they say. They don't want war, but they're completely prepared for it. The wisest course of action is to give them no reason to fight us. We treat them as equals. We respect their territory. We honor their diplomacy. And we make sure every other species in the galaxy knows to do the same. And if other species attack humanity anyway, a council member asked, then we stay out of it, Thraxar said firmly. We do not help humanity's enemies. We do not get involved. We simply watch and learn, because whoever attacks humanity will learn the same lesson we did, and unlike us, they might not survive it. The council voted. The decision was made. The Kreshtari Empire would pursue peaceful relations with humanity. 2 months later, Captain Sarah Chen arrived at the Kreshtari homeworld aboard the Determination. This time she was not intercepted by a fleet. Instead, she was met by an honor guard, 12 ships that escorted her safely to the capital. Admiral Velkoth himself greeted her at the orbital station. Captain Chen, he said, his translator rendering the human words carefully. Welcome to Kreshtar Prime. The High Council extends its formal apologies for the incident in the Epsilon sector. Thank you, Admiral, Chen replied. And thank you for honoring our diplomatic credentials this time. Velkoth's mandibles clicked softly, a sound of embarrassment. We learned an important lesson that day. We all learned something, Chen said gently. You learned about human capabilities. We learned that the Kreshtari can be reasoned with, can change their minds, can choose peace over pride. That's worth more than any victory. Over the following weeks, treaties were signed. Trade routes were established. Embassy staff was exchanged. The Kreshtari Empire formally announced that humanity was under imperial protection, meaning any attack on human interests would be considered an attack on the empire itself. The news spread across the galaxy. Other species heard the story of how one human ship had defeated an entire Kreshtari armada. Some species dismissed it as propaganda. Others sent their own scouts to observe human vessels. Those scouts came back with reports that confirmed everything. Human ships moved differently.
Fought differently.
Thought differently. They were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the most advanced. But they were possibly the most dangerous because they understood warfare at a level no one else did. Within a year, 12 other species had established diplomatic relations with humanity. Within 5 years, there were trade agreements with 40 species. Within 10 years, humanity had become a recognized power in galactic politics, not through conquest, but through demonstration of capability and consistent, peaceful behavior. The story of the Determination became famous. Young warriors from a dozen species studied what happened that day, trying to understand how the humans had won. Military academies added human tactical doctrine to their curriculums. Strategy experts wrote papers analyzing the battle, but the most important change was simpler. Species stopped assuming humanity was weak. They stopped laughing at human ships. They stopped making jokes about primitive kinetic weapons. They remembered what happened when the Krishtari did those things. And in the neutral zones of space, on the diplomatic channels, in the quiet conversations between ambassadors, a new truth spread throughout the galaxy. Humanity had come to the stars not to conquer, but to survive. They brought with them 10,000 years of warfare, 10,000 years of learning, 10,000 years of knowing exactly how to protect themselves. They hoped for peace. They prepared for war, and they had proven once and for all that hope backed by preparation was more powerful than pride backed by force. Captain Sarah Chen eventually retired from military service. She became an ambassador, traveling the galaxy and building relationships with other species. Everywhere she went, beings asked her about that day in the Epsilon debris field, about the battle that changed everything. And she always gave them the same answer. We didn't come to the stars to fight. We came to the stars to find others who felt the same way. The battle was not about winning. It was about teaching, about showing that peace is not weakness, that mercy is not surrender, and that the strongest species are the ones who choose not to use all their strength unless they must. The alien fleet had laughed at one Terran ship. They laughed at first, then they saw the truth. And the truth changed everything.